Hello and welcome to the Home Assistant Podcast. My name's Phil. Joining me as usual, I've got my partner in crime, Mr. Rohan Karamandi.
Hello.
This episode is sponsored by Home Assistant Cloud by Nabu Casa. Easily access your local Home Assistant instance remotely for a small monthly fee that supports the Home Assistant and ESP Home projects. Configuration is done by the user interface, so there's no fiddling with router settings, SSL certificates, or any YAML.
How's it going?
Yeah, good. How about you, mate?
Good.
2022.5, the May release. Rohan, I think I say this. I think I've said this for all the releases this year. Probably one of my favorite releases so far. But this one has actually got quite a few new features in here that I'm really excited about.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to getting into that. But before we do, I think it's only fair. I think it's May, so it's been pretty good. But all right, Cloud strikes again. Here we go. This time right. It's Insteon. Oh, yeah, I haven't heard that in so long.
I know. It feels like this one's been kind of beaten to death a little bit in the last couple of weeks, but it is. It's a problem, right? So Insteon kind of, for if you haven't heard, Insteon basically just pulled their shutters and told everyone, hey, guess what? We've pulled our shutters. But they told everyone after the fact.
They didn't even tell anyone. They just sort of disappeared for a while, right?
They just disappeared. Yeah, fair enough. Like, there's a few news outlets that were like, hey, by the way, we think Insteon's dead, but we don't know.
Yeah.
We haven't quite figured that out yet, but everything seems to stop working and so on and so forth. And then a couple of days later, you look on Insteon's website and I forget the parent company's name, Smart Labs or something like that.
Something like that,
and they were basically like, hey, due to some financial difficulties and so on and so forth, we've had to, pull our shutters, which is unfortunate. I do feel bad for the staff and all the users that do use it, but I think, could it have been played a little better? Maybe. But the nice thing is we found that, Insteon is still locally controlled. So if you haven't, there's a few ifs here, but there is some sort of a perfect scenario where you can still leverage Home Assistant to use Insteon because it is still local.
If you've got the hardware, though, and the hardware might be a bit hard to find.
Correct, right? And if you don't, then you might be out of luck. So, I mean, it's, I don't know.
Yeah. We spent a whole episode of the All Things Smart Home show. You can go watch it on YouTube if you're interested, on just talking Insteon and cloud services and stuff. So we won't harp on it too much here if we're repeating ourselves. But I think in terms of Home Assistant, what's important to know is that the Home Assistant devs and the team have pulled up their socks for this release. Currently in the beta, I think it landed just this morning for us in the beta land. They've put in the Insteon control panel. Home Assistant has a blog post specifically targeted to Insteon users. If you are lucky enough to have a local modem or PLM controller, whatever they call it, if you've got one of those, you can use it with Home Assistant. And there is now an interface in Home Assistant to pair, control, and manage your Insteon network, all from within the Home Assistant network. Now, it is in the beta. Hopefully, it passes the beta and it does get into the 2022.5 release. I'm pretty sure it will, but just in case it doesn't, it's definitely coming. And good to see that the Home Assistant team have, really jumped on this as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it's funny because, like I said, I feel like we've talked about this all day, every day. There's a few like groups that I'm like, just rooms that I'm in where, everybody was like, oh my God, Insteon's dying. We spent an entire episode on All Things Smart Home. I actually jumped on the Home On podcast, so check that out too, to talk about exactly this and what Home Assistant's doing and how people can kind of utilize that. And, this is a big one, I think, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I think it's as big as, if not bigger than Logitech and so on and so forth.
Absolutely.
The Logitech one really, really irks me, but, that's a, couple $100 as opposed to thousands of dollars worth of investment into this. So I think, this one I think was an unfortunate situation for the company and their staff and so on and so forth. Whereas the Logitech one was just stupid. I still stand by that. That one arguably was just bad business practice. But I get end of lifing stuff and things like that. I just think it could have been a little better done.
Especially over an SSL certificate, right? So.
Yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, I think we've beaten this one down pretty far. I don't know. What do you think, Phil?
Yeah, I think so. So yeah, go check out our YouTube video on it if you need any more information, or if you are an Insteon user and you're not a Home Assistant user and you want some other places to go. We've tried to cover off as best we can over there. I think everyone's aware of it now, but it's just a shame we've had to do it again, right?
Yeah, it is. It's unfortunate, but I mean, at least you're. Well, some people might be dead in the water, but a few users won't be, right? So hopefully, if you are an Insteon user, hopefully you are one of those users that can leverage Home Assistant and don't reset your devices yet.
Yeah, don't do that. Do not do that.
And then once you get all this working, then you can play around with it a little more.
That's it. All right, 2022.5. So let's get into some of these new features.
Yeah.
Rohan, I think one of the big ones people are going to talk about this one is the new configuration menu.
Yeah.
So I think it was only a couple of releases ago that they really added in the colors to the configuration menu.
Yeah.
But yeah, here we are again. They've completely redesigned it. Things are in different places now,
yes,
to say the least. Things have moved around.
Just when you're getting used to it. No, but
yeah,
I actually like this layout. I know a lot of people aren't a big fan of changes, right? But I think just once I think things are laid out a little more logically. I was playing with it last night too, and I do like how things are laid out. And the nice thing is it's a little more intuitive. So for things, again, if you're used to the old menu, there is going to be a little bit of work to get to that point, to be like, okay, I can use this again. It's not too bad. It's, again, like I said, it's logically laid out. And again, there's stuff where, like, again, if you're on a supervised version, then guess what? Then you see more options there, and it seems more seamless, right? Whereas before, everything was its own area and its own menu and so on and so forth. Whereas even if you look at a lot of the other types of hubs and devices and stuff like that aren't Home Assistant, you don't really see a specific, like, hey, let's see the hardware version of or hardware statistics of these whatever boxes, right? So it's a little more seamless in those, and I think that's the kind of experience that this is bringing into. So yeah, I mean, it's changed a little bit, but I don't mind it too much. But
yeah, I think one of the things that was really threw me off was the YAML config. So
yeah,
I definitely use YAML a lot, and I went to just check my configuration, and I was like, oh, where's the big check configuration button gone, right? It was literally right there, one click away in the settings menu, and I went through all the settings options, couldn't find it. And yeah, it wasn't until I read it randomly on Discord in the beta channel there that they were saying, oh, it's actually moved into the developer tools. So yeah. If you're a heavy YAML user, you'll need to enable developer tools and make sure you've got advanced mode set on in your user so you can see those. And yeah, there's a little YAML place there now. That's also where you can go and reload all your YAML config too. So you want to reload your automations or anything like that. That's all moved into the developer tools now.
Yeah, and again, even seeing things like your backups and seeing things like how much storage you have and things like that. And you'll notice that some of the menus are a little empty. So if you go to like storage, you'll see like it's literally like 2 bars, right? That's going to be built out soon, hopefully. And it should be a lot more. What's the word I'm trying to look for? Like you'll get a lot more visibility into your system, hopefully, through that as time goes on. So I think right now it's just, starting out, and let's see where it goes, right?
Yep, agreed.
All right. On from there. So ZHA. So you can now configure power on states for supported devices. So if you have stuff like, Philips Hue and so on and so forth, when power is restored, you can tell the device how to operate. So for example, if you lose power comes back on. Do you want the light to turn on? Maybe not. Maybe you want the light to stay off, so on and so forth. So you can start to define a lot of that in Home Assistant too, which is pretty nice. So you don't have to.
That's actually, really cool.
Yeah.
Because generally, like, that stuff was restricted to Philips Hue. I hope this is opened up to, that's how I read it in the release notes. So I hope this has finally opened that stuff up. Because I know that's one of the sticking points people have against smart bulbs, right? Is when the power comes back on, after a blackout, your lights are always on. But Philips, who have addressed this for, I think it was a couple of years ago now, they introduced that feature in a firmware update to their bulbs. So finally good to see that Home Assistant can just do it from within the UI.
Yeah, which is nice. So you don't have to deal with it, open multiple apps, things like that. Again, a lot of people I know just delete. I'm one of those people too. I just kind of delete like the apps that, for devices that I have that I don't necessarily need to get into, right?
Yeah, exactly. All right. There is a new quick bar icon, which is primarily been added for tablet users, but it does exist on all interfaces or all screen sizes, I should say. When you load up your dashboard now, like the Lovelace page, but your Home Assistant UI dashboard, you'll notice a new magnifying glass in the top right-hand corner. So that will allow you to access the Entity Quick Bar, which you would usually get by pressing the E key on your keyboard if you're used to that. The other option you can press is C on your keyboard to open up the command quick bar. So this is introduced. It's there. I'm personally not a fan of it. I don't. From whatever reason, I'd like the ability to remove it. I voiced that. Hopefully that comes in a future release, the option to hide that away. It maybe from beta it comes out in the actual release. But for me, I just don't like that button being forced on me, taking up my screen real estate. But some people may have a use case for it.
It's funny. Last night, we updated everything and to the latest beta and so on, and then I guess for whatever reason my Conbi stick didn't pick up, so I just had to do a restart the container, and I was lying in bed and did the whole good night thing, and then a bunch of stuff turned off, all my Wi-Fi stuff turned off, and none of my Zigbee stuff turned off, and I was like, what's going on? So I look, and all my Zigbee like switches and stuff are all grayed out. So I was like, okay, so I'm like, okay, cool, I know what this is. And I was like, I wish I had the command bar. And I was like, wait, and because we had just discovered this yesterday,
just update it.
So I hit the magnifying glass and restarted my Home Assistant instance through there, and I was like, okay, cool. That's so. I mean, just mostly because I'm too lazy to go through menu to go find the shutdown and restart again. Through all of these versions, I still every time I'm like, is it in here? Is it in there? Whatever. I love the quick bar, even on laptop. Like I always hit C and like stop or restart or whatever it is.
Yep.
So now I love the fact that I was in bed and the automation wasn't working, and I needed to restart Home Assistant, and I did it from my phone, right, which is nice.
Well, that's interesting, because one of the things I noticed part of that new configuration menu is that I'm running Home Assistant in a Docker container, and I can't find the old stop or restart server button anymore. I don't know if it's just hidden somewhere, but I've just noticed, you're right, in the command bar, you can, type in the stop server, restart server button. So
so the stop server was removed a while ago. I don't remember what
for release. Docker containers. Yeah,
for Docker containers.
Yeah, it didn't make sense. I think they just renamed it to restart, right?
Well, so there used to be a stop and a restart, right? So
and restart never worked in Docker because you can't restart.
Well,
from Docker, right?
Restart exactly, right? Whereas stop actually kills the container, and in your if you have a Docker compose file, in your compose file, if you say
always restart,
restart always whatever, then it'll actually kill the container and bring it right back up. So that's actually one of the things that we lost. So when we talked about it to Frank, we were chatting about that, and he laughed. He's like, yeah, that was one of those things that we did remove, and apparently I'm one of the very few people that uses that method. So.
I think it's a valid reason. That's the whole reason that I originally created HA Dockermon, was because I needed a way to stop my Home Assistant instance, from within Home Assistant, because I would push up a YAML update. It was before YAML reloading was really around for everything. And I was always pressing the restart button and it didn't work, right? As I didn't realize I could just press the stop button and it would work.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think there is use cases for stopping the Home Assistant container for whatever reason from within Home Assistant. Maybe you want to automatically kill the Home Assistant container at 3 a.m. and you just want to do it by an automation.
Yeah. You
so
can
I
still
think-
do that, right? It's just, I think just the physical button is gone for the
Yes.
stop. So you can still hit the command palette and hit, say stop server or whatever it's called. And that'll still work, right? The restart button is there. It's just in the top. So if you go into with the new menu, if you click on system, it's actually on the top right there. So that does exist. It's just, again, it's one of those things that is moved a little bit.
Wow, it is up there. You're right.
Yeah.
I'm not used to the things. Maybe it's just sometimes because I don't use the UI editor that much, there'll be like a random disk icon or a plus icon in the corner somewhere that I'm not used to. Yeah, you're right. The restart button is hiding up there. For me, I would have assumed it would be an option in somewhere here as a main menu item. But fair enough, I guess. It's something you don't want to accidentally press with a fat finger thumb while you're 11 p.m. scrolling through the menu, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, and I'm just looking at it on my cell phone as well, and it's actually it looks pretty good there too. So,
yeah, okay, all right. Well, now I know where it is. That's good. So
yeah.
Solve that problem. There we go. Cool.
Live on the air. All right. The gauge card. So if you use the gauge card, which is essentially that like kind of speedometer type of card, you'll know it's red, yellow, green, and it's only those colors in that exact order, right? So that's actually changed a little bit where they've updated it so that you can now start having different segments with different colors. So if you want to have like turquoise or something like that, great. You can, you color away to your heart's content. So and then you can actually have multiple segments. So you can have like red, yellow, green, yellow, red, right? So if there's something like, it's sort of like a fire extinguisher, right? Where it's like, hey, it's great right in the middle. Too low is too much is bad, and too high is too bad too, right? So you want it exactly at 12 o'clock kind of thing. So you can now customize the gauge card to use those segments there.
I think if you've used Grafana, you'll definitely see some similarities there.
Yeah.
As soon as I saw the example, I was like, oh, I've seen that before.
Yeah.
All right, now we're going to get into the exciting stuff, and all the next stuff that's coming along in our show notes here, I think, is making this one of my favorite releases in Home Assistant for quite some time.
Yeah.
There is some great stuff here.
There's
it's all based.
Ton of love for YAML too, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was about to say. Like, it's all YAML. So anyone that's saying that, hey, Home Assistant's moving away from YAML and going more with UI, the love for YAML in this release is absolutely amazing. So I'll start off with the first one here. It's if and else blocks for YAML. So there's now finally support for an if and else conditions in YAML. There is no else if. It is, if else. You could essentially, and I've been doing this for some time, do an if else with a choose statement. You can also do an if else and else if with a choose block. It just takes a bit of making sure you get all the conditions in the right order. But just an if else block, making it a little bit simpler. If this condition is true, then perform this action, else do this. Great to see this in here.
Yeah, and I think the else if part is literally the point of choose. So which is so to me that makes sense. So this is it's a nice easy way to do things like this. So you can just do if else. That's it, right? Like it's if something happens, then this, go for it, right? And so I actually like that premise there, because again, otherwise for simple kind of pieces you want to do there, it starts to get, I don't know, like too complicated to just do one quick and easy thing.
Yep. So
and if else is also very easy to understand logically too, right? If blah blah blah, then do this. Like it's simple, so I like that. Continue on error. So if you've ever built an automation or a script that doesn't finish executing because something errored out, or for whatever reason like that, you can actually now tell your automations and script to say, hey, keep processing when there's an error that happens. So it's just a little what's the word for it? Like it's I don't know, it's part of your automation where you can just put in on error yes or something like that. So
it's like some condition there you just put
or continue on error, I think is what it is. Yeah.
Same way you put like what mode the script needs to run in. So mode parallel, you can now do continue on error, yes, and it'll ignore all the errors, which is pretty good.
Exactly.
What else have we got? Ability to stop a script and automation mid-flight. So there's now a stop button. Previously, I think in a script sort of land, when a script was running, the state would turn to on, and you could then flick the script off.
Yeah.
If it was stopped, if you've got like a delay or it's waiting for something in there. But now there is a stop button in the UI. You can do that. So yeah, you can kill the execution of the script while it's running, which is very cool.
Yeah, I think that's a little more intuitive too, right? Rather than just
going
in and being like, all right, let me time this, let me try and click that there and whatever. So I think that's nice there. Parallel actions. All right. So this is, we're actually getting into some really interesting things here. So again, this is a little more of an advanced feature because there are a ton of caveats there, right? So you can actually have Home Assistant make multiple service calls to multiple things at the exact same time. So it's nice because you don't need to wait for an action to finish before the next one happens. But again, there's a bunch of caveats and read the notes. But in summary, there's simple things like, hey, we don't actually know which action's going to run first. It's not, or if there's going to be one specific one that runs just a bit quicker or something like that. So, there's no way of queuing that way. So, again, for a nice thing might be if you have like a good night routine and you can say, okay, well, you know what? I want to turn all of these light switches off at once. But at the same time, if you're waiting for something to finish, that's not a good idea. That you want something sequenced at that point, right? So again, this is one of those things that really needs to be thought out first before using and think it through, right? So I think that's the piece here. But it is cool to see that they're bringing this functionality in, and again, a little more of an advanced feature, but it's still nice to see for especially a lot of the advanced users as well.
Yeah, like I have always thought, it would be when you're writing out your automations or your scripts sequentially, right? Like you've got to think, okay, I want this to happen first, that to happen there. Even when you've got, like one light is a Philips Hue light, another light is a light from, like My Light or LifeX or something. You might call the light turn off service, but it's still going to go out and fire each one after the other, right? First it'll turn off the Philips Hue, then it will turn off the My Light, then it will turn off the LifeX. But now with this parallel action, Home Assistant can then send that turn off command to all those different lights at the exact same moment. So this is very cool stuff.
Yeah.
All right. There is also a new match any for state conditions. So this is a quicker way for you to define multiple entities that could be in a condition. So the best way, if you say one of your conditions is I need the motion sensor in the bedroom or the motion sensor in the hallway to be on. Previously in YAML, your condition block, you'd have to use an OR condition block and then specify, the states for both of those sensors. Now you can combine them into a single, condition block of a, state on for those motion sensors, and you will now have a match any of yes or true. I believe it's true. And then that saves you much more lines in your YAML. So that's going to be very useful, I think.
Yeah. There's also new triggers for not from and not to. So when you're building out your automations, you can now start triggering things on a negative state. So for example, trigger this automation when a motion sensor doesn't detect some motion, or something like that, right? Or you want to say, hey, you know what? Trigger it when it's not, when my device state is not unavailable and not unknown, for example, right? So whatever that might mean, but I think there's actually some good value in that one too.
Yeah, definitely. And there's also the ability to disable trigger and condition blocks. So yeah, if you need to do some testing in your YAML code, let's say you've got a condition that your automation shouldn't fire when the sun is set or not set, but you need to test out that automation, you can then disable that specific condition block. You can also go ahead and disable a specific trigger as well. So you could say, all right, for the next 30 minutes, I'm going to need to do some testing on this automation. I don't want the automation to be triggered on this time pattern or on this particular trigger as well. So
this is nice too, especially in the UI. Like in YAML, you can kind of just comment out whatever and say
exactly,
hey,
yes,
just keep it out. But you can, it still works in YAML. There is still just an option to say, hey, disable true or something like that. But in the UI as well, this has been brought in as well, which is even nicer because in the UI you basically had to delete it
That's
and
right,
then recreate it, right? Where, you could possibly fat finger something, you could possibly, whatever that is, right? So
or you just forgot what it was originally, and then unless you
Yeah.
got to restore from a snapshot, it gets all messy, right?
Yeah, and then it starts excluding like let me screenshot this so that, I have my exact actions and stuff like that, right? So it's just a little cleaner. And, just specific triggers and things like that, you can do it on a one-by-one basis, so which is nice.
I think another update that is coming into the UI as well is that the UI can now select multiple entities for a trigger. So that's something you've been able to do in YAML for quite some time. You just provide a list of entity IDs. So, for example, using the motion sensor example again, you could have, when any of these motion sensors detect motion, then trigger this automation. You can now do that from the UI as well.
Yeah. And from a calendar perspective, there's a new calendar trigger. So you can trigger when a calendar event starts. So before you'd have to say, hey, when the state of the calendar goes to on, whatever. And now you can just say, hey, when it starts, just go, right?
Yeah.
Which is nice. And, it sounds like there's a bunch of work being done in the next, I don't know, in this release and maybe the next couple of releases, maybe in the back end of the calendar logic too. So which is really nice.
That's cool. All right. Onto something that you probably won't see as a new feature, but I definitely think you'll feel is more database optimizations. And I've always a fan to see these coming along. So if you have a lot of sensors generating statistics, as it's compiling the statistics, it will now take 30 to 100 times less time. That's always a good thing to see. The number of database queries needed for most sensors is about 99% less. So massive improvement there.
That's huge.
And there's also been additional improvements done to the history APIs just to speed up retrieving data from the database. So I think they've been able to reduce that by about 15 to 35% on average. So always, good to see it getting a bit more snappier, which just makes the whole system feel faster, right?
Yeah.
And when you're in a limited resource environment like a Raspberry Pi, all that savings helps.
Well, it's also if you're doing something like using an SD card, which is again still not best practice yet. It's nice because it's just, especially when you start releasing or when you start dropping the number of queries you need and stuff like that. That starts to save your SD card a little bit. So, it's nice to see those. Anyways, again, even if you do use an SD card, strongly suggest move off of it. But in case you're still using it for whatever reason, it gets a little bit better. So at least it'll take a little longer before your card dies. So
that's it.
But it will die, so get off of it. So. All right. So scripts. So now scripts get a unique ID. So that means you can start to edit their names, their icons, and assign them to areas, do all of that stuff right from the UI. Again, this isn't necessarily a big change for you to deal with, but this is just something good to know as well, so that now you can start moving things around, and you don't have to get stuck where you're like, okay, I got to change the name, meaning I got to recreate the script or rebuild all of the things that tie to this script and so on and so forth. So you can just, in the back end, it's all dealing with the ID. So
yeah, it's good that this is actually also done for YAML scripts as well. Because it's pretty cool. Like in YAML, you can give it like a name or an alias or the ID of it. So it must use whatever naming convention you've got there. To then somehow assign it a unique ID, which is pretty cool. All right. Z-Wave.js server discovery is now here. So if you run a Z-Wave.js server manually, for example, a Docker container, it will now be automatically discovered by Home Assistant on your network. Pretty cool.
Yeah. Backup services. This one's big. So if you use Docker like myself, they've now added the backup.create service so that you can basically just run the backup on a automation. And again, it's not specific to Docker users or anything like that. You can do this just in general. So if you're unsupervised, it can run it on the supervisor and whatever. Here you can, for me specifically, I'll definitely plan to leverage this to just have an automation, basically like, whatever, once a day or once a week or something like that. Just go through and just automatically just back up my Home Assistant instance, which is fantastic. And as of the last release, remember, it's the whole instance too, so which is nice.
Yeah, and available for everyone. Yeah, so if you can container users, Sonos favorite sensor is now available. So if you're like me, you have a Sonos system, there's now a new favorite sensor. So you can use that to access and use your favorites in automations, scripts, and templates. So that's a good little feature to have.
There you go. That's a ton of just Home Assistant love that's been given. So
yeah, totally. Right?
Shout out to the development team and folks like Frank and everybody else that kind of gives works on this. So it's huge. All right, so let's talk about some new integration. Meter, which is it's a smart meat thermometer. Built from Aption Labs. So that is now integrated in. So I don't know, you can have your lights blink when your meat hits a certain temperature, I guess. That's cool.
Yeah, so I once again, Home Assistant is my shopping list, right? As soon as I saw this in the release notes, I was like, oh.
Yeah, I need one.
I need one, yeah, right? Like I've got a Weber old, like it must use like one of those RF protocols to submit like the wireless probe, right? It's not Bluetooth, but it's one of those like 433 megahertz ones or something like that. And I haven't been bothered to hack it. I'm like, it seems too much effort. Yeah. But then I saw this in the release notes. I was like, oh, okay, maybe that'd be cool. Until I saw the price tag of these things, and I think one of them was like $200 Australian, which is like similar Canadian price. So it's probably like 150 US for one thermometer. And then I saw that, the device class, I think it's device class in Home Assistant is cloud polling. So that means similar to Insteon, if Meter decides that their expensive thermometers aren't making them enough money one day and they decide to shut down the API, then there goes the Home Assistant integration. So back to the drawing board on that. I know there's a few options out there, but yeah.
It'd be cool to see this if they can, it might be interesting if instead of that, they can run it through run it through like an ESP or something like that, where it can pick up on the.
Oh, I'm sure there is someone out there that has made like an ESP project out of this, right? Because it should be pretty simple to do. Once you get a probe, you chuck it to an ESP device, and then away you go. I think I've seen some projects that have also tried to backport, those wireless ones that I've got, like the Weber one. They've tried to sniff those with an RF sniffer. So I'm sure there's someone that's done that. Easily.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it's pretty cool. Neat product, but very specific.
Yeah. All right, the Sens integration. So the nVent RayChem Sens, which allows you to control and monitor your Wi-Fi thermostats. So once again, another cloud polling device. So not my cup of tea, but if you've already got one of those thermostats installed, it's now can be integrated into Home Assistant.
Yep. Slim Proto. So if you use Squeezebox music player, so essentially that Slim Proto basically allows you to use that music player, or the Squeezebox music player directly from Home Assistant. So you don't need to have like a Logitech media server or something like that. And it lets you control some of the hardware like the classic transporter, duet, boom, radio, and touch. And a bunch of software players as well: Squeeze Lite, Picore Player, Max2Play, so on and so forth. But it's funny because again, if you really like DIYing it, there's even a player for ESP32.
Nice.
That's kind of cool, actually. I part of me wants to play with that, so I think it's really neat.
Add it to your list.
Yeah, list of stuff that I'm not going to do. Yeah, the ongoing list of things where up here in my head I want to do them, but.
It's funny. It's actually become a thing. I think the other day in the podcast room, I think CDM Boy had a message. He's like, is Rohan going to need a sprinkler system in before we give him more projects? So.
Yeah. I know. We've now that it's started thawing up again and started to get a little warm, we're considering doing it again. But let's see.
Let's see. Right, I like it. All right, let me try and pronounce this. The Trafikverket, something like that. There you go. That's my Swedish for the day. Ferry departures are now integrated into Home Assistant.
There you go. All right, some breaking changes. ZWave.js needs a version bump. So if you use ZWave.js add-on, you need to have at least 0.1.56. If you use the ZWave.js to MQTT, you need to have at least 0.38.0. And then if you use that in a Docker container, so the first one, sorry, that I just said was the add-on. If you use a Docker container, you need to have at least 6.7.0. And if you use your own Docker container or do something else, you'll need Z-Wave.js server at least 1.16.0. That's a lot of numbers I just threw at you. Just check the release notes to see what you need. But basically, you need a version bump.
It does surprise me. I don't know. I assume this project they're all very similar, right? Like Z-Wave.js to MQT and the Z-Wave.js add-on. Surely they could all align their version numbers at one point, right?
Yeah.
All right, let's go. All right, from version 1.5, everyone's at version 1.5, right? Like,
That's right.
Fine. I know, obviously, you've got Z-Wave.js to MQTT. It's probably got different versions underneath.
Yeah. Because there's the MQTT code. There's just yeah. So I get it, but I don't know.
Even like the Z-Wave.js to add-on and the Docker container should pretty be like very similar aligned, right? Like you've got, 670 for the Docker container and then 0.38.0. So
yeah.
All right. Text-to-speech TTS. So the TTS base URL option has been deprecated. This one is quite I've used the base URL option in my Home Assistant instance since day dot, I think.
Yep.
So if you're an older Home Assistant user or have been a Home Assistant user for a long time, the base URL option has been deprecated. So make sure you go in and just check your configuration and make sure it's all removed.
Yeah. They brought in the internal and external URLs a while ago, so leverage those instead. Templates. So trigger-based template sensors are now initialized to the last known state. So typically they would start off as unknown. Now it starts off as, whatever the last state was, that's what it would be. So that's actually pretty important to note if you do leverage template sensors and your triggers. So there you go.
On that, the template stuff, I think I've had a whole bunch of, when Home Assistant restarts, do this sort of thing.
Yeah.
To trigger those automations. So that's good that I don't have to do that anymore.
Yeah.
Recorder. So Home Assistant will now automatically repack your database once a month on the second Sunday of the month. So repacking allows it to shrink the database in file size, which results in smaller backups and also frees up space that has been done by database optimizations made in 2022.4. It's done on the second Sunday of the month just so they can avoid an upgrade release cycle of Home Assistant. So, Home Assistant releases on the first week of the month. They don't want, to have to do an upgrade. If you're upgrading on that first week, they don't necessarily want, everything happening on the database in that 1 week. So
yeah.
Avoids conflicts there.
Oh, that is great.
And there's obviously more breaking changes too. So just be sure to check out the release notes in case you have something that you're using that is affected.
Yeah. And same with a lot of the stuff we talked about too. Again, this is just a mass compilation that we're doing, but of just stuff that we thought was really cool and whatever. And there's a ton this episode. So, these releases are just getting more and more and more love as time goes on. So, which is fantastic to see. So, my last rant about my Kivo got a lot of feedback, which I honestly, genuinely from the bottom of my heart appreciate. So it's actually helped me quite a bit. So, I've gotten quite a few different folks that have said, hey, have a look at this one, have a look at these different things. People have reached out on Twitter, on email, on Discord, so on and so forth. So I am super, super grateful. And if I haven't gotten back to you, I think I've gotten back to most. I think just a couple of emails I haven't. I apologize. Just it's been a little insane for me lately. But other than that, this is amazing. So a lot of people seem to also have, a few people did mail in going, hey, you know what? I've had similar kind of issues or just complaints about the Kivo lock, and why don't you try a variety of different ones. So I haven't settled on one yet. Just again, life got in the way last few days, but essentially there's a few that actually look really, really, really cool. There's one that's a little bit different as well, that essentially it goes into your, it's not a smart lock in the sense that you have that giant like the fat box on in the back of your door.
Yeah.
It's actually it's a BLE based one called Level, and essentially that it's what is the mechanism called?
Like,
yeah, it's discrete. It's in your door.
Yeah.
Right. It's the actual mechanism that does the turning and with where the bolt is. Right. So that mechanism itself, and unfortunately I'm not a lock person, so I don't know what that's called. But that mechanism itself has the smarts built into it. So where it is the turn on, turn off, or lock, unlock kind of thing. So that's really cool. I know there's a couple of conversations on Twitter about that one from
because I think it was HomeKit enabled as well from memory, or it was Bluetooth.
Yeah, it's Bluetooth. It is HomeKit as well. And I think the HomeKit part just depends on how far you are, or there's a few things that vary in time. My big thing with Kivo was the gateway didn't help at all from a time perspective or anything like that. And it was still kind of just generally crap. This is obviously, if you use HomeKit or something like that, it has to communicate to the base and the base back to this and so on and so forth. So there is a bit of time expected there, but at least with the Bluetooth, if I tap the door or do whatever to trigger the lock, I expect it to actually just open as soon as possible. Right. So, so the Level lock sounds pretty cool. It is a little pricey, but it's pretty cool. There's also the Schlage ones that a few people have recommended as well. And
so good to know that you had options, because remember your requirements were that it had to be on that very small part of your door because the glass is so close.
Exactly. And I needed an actual key, right? It can't just be there's a bunch. Who is it that just released it? It's not Anchor. Is it Aquara that just released a lock? Somebody just released a lock, but essentially, it's keypad only, and I think it's fingerprint. So there's no keyhole. So if the battery dies, again, because I don't have a garage door that I can sneak into or something like that.
Yep.
If my battery dies,
carry batteries in your pocket.
Yeah. Well, even if I did, the battery's on the other side, so I can't get to it.
Kidding.
Right. So even and most things, most locks are like that, right? My Kivo's like that, but even a lot of Schlage locks and stuff like that, where the battery pack is in the back because the front needs to look sleek and whatever, right? So it's just the key part.
The Yale one I've got actually has two very discrete battery terminals on the bottom of the keypad. You can't even see it.
I've heard of this.
And you would just grab, one of those 9-volt, little rectangle batteries. Once again, you need a battery on you. You just hold it against the keypad, and that will provide enough power to allow you to open the door for a couple of times, I guess.
It's like jump starting your car, but for
exactly,
keypads.
I've never had to use it. I hope I never will. But I will probably have to buy a battery and hide it somewhere in the garden.
Yeah.
Because similar to you, I've got keys. Don't have a key to the other doors in the house. Actually, I don't have any house keys on me at all.
Yeah.
I just use the keypad. So if that thing dies, I don't have access to my house.
Yeah. So that's I'm trying to get keyless as well, and we have our neighbors have a spare key just in case I get locked out or even if we're not home and there's an emergency, something like that.
Yep.
So, but it's just somebody we trust with a key, and I think my parents have a key or something. Maybe their key. Actually, they have a key for my old lock, so they don't have a key.
There you go. There's something else for your to-do list.
Yeah. Well, that's whatever. But my neighbors have worst case. I'm not driving all the way to my parents' house. Whatever. I'd rather just go across the street.
That's true.
So, but again, thank you to everybody that reached out. I will respond to those emails back. I've read them. I just haven't had a chance to properly, reply or anything like that. There's just so many good ideas here. So I'm basically where we're at is right now. The actual mechanism for the door handle itself is also getting messed up. It's like, I don't know, it must be like 10 years old. It was from the previous owners as well, so it's probably brand new. So it's like, to open the door actually takes either the back, like the palm of your hand, or like to press down on the mechanism. And so we want to replace a bunch of stuff and probably paint the door. I'll probably do all of it at once. So hopefully when it gets a little bit warmer.
Can you take the opportunity, if you're going to replace the handle, can you then look at just getting like a smart handle as well and and putting it all into the one mechanism? Would that open up some more options?
Possibly. I mean, I've also thought of getting a new door, but a new door is also like, well, at this point, but a new door is like $5,000 or maybe not $5,000, but like they're at least like $2,000. That I'm just kind of like, oh, that's a lot of money for a
front door, right? Like you got to have a solid door at the front. Yeah.
Well, I mean, let's face it, a door's got a giant window in it, right? So it's only as safe as, somebody with a brick.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So,
you're just keeping the polite people out, basically.
Yeah. If somebody really wanted to, they can get in, and or any of the windows around the house, right? It's not. That's why I have other security measures, like, again, motion detection and, cameras and so on and so forth, right? So
the cameras that can detect delivery people? Or?
That's right. Those ones.
Yeah.
Those ones.
Yeah, those ones. Yeah, okay.
So, but no. Again, it's. I think this summer, hopefully, if I get a little bit of time, I do want to spend some time doing some of these things, right? It's on my constant to-do list that's just not been done for like 5 years, so... but
I think that's everyone though, right? Like even you see like just random people on Twitter, they'll go, oh, I've done this. You're like, oh, got to add that to my to-do list. And then you'll see like 5 other comments. Great. Now I'll never get to do this either because I just don't have the time or whatever. So
yeah. And then there's the keeners that are just, hey, I did this and this and this. And it's like, oh, okay. I wish I could be you. But yeah, so again, thanks so much everyone for that. And again, I haven't made a decision yet. I'll figure it out as I kind of look more into it. But
yeah, it'd be interesting to see what you go with and what the decision process for you looks like for that, right? Like you're going to go try and say Bluetooth, you're going to go another protocol, you're going to go HomeKit, you're going to go something else. So yeah, I think I'd be interested to see how you land on that.
Yeah, exactly. Personally, I hate Bluetooth, but it's also the most convenient because you don't need to fire up an app. You don't need to do any of that stuff. So
yep. Makes sense.
We'll see. Cool.
All right. Well, I think that wraps us up for another episode. Great release. Thank you, everyone that's contributed to this release. Great YAML release as well. So, yeah, really looking forward to testing out all this new stuff.
No, perfect.
Catch you guys in the next one.
Take care. Cheers.
If you want to share your Home Assistant journey or come on as a guest, reach out to us at feedback@haspodcast.io. That's HASS podcast.io.
The Home Assistant Podcast is hosted by Phil Hawthorne and myself, Rohan Karamandi. For links to topics we discussed today, check out our show notes on haspodcast.io.